Hi everyone, I am Hollywood royalty. I'm a descendant of French aristocracy, and one of you made sense that my father was Queen Elizabeth's first cousin. We'll get into another time, but I say this to preface uh, the topic of today, and that is the way that royals or celebrities and different individuals will use studio security to fortify themselves. Now, initially, I have to say straight off as well, my gratitude to several different YouTubers that started off this series and this channel through their recommendations. So let's get through them. There are URLs in the description below. Please go and see these different channels if you have not. Fiona, Avid Gardener, Trevor Coates, Queen Goethe, and Duchess of Narcissus, Blair. I truly appreciate it. It's very sweet of you, a real surprise, and I hope to keep it going. Truly, it requires it because it is so new. The algorithm, you'll see it, it goes woo when they give a nice recommend, and then it's quiet once more, and woo, and then it's oh no, why? So please share. That's the most important thing, is for it to be seen. But of course, interact, leave comments, leave questions, recommendations for future videos, and of course a like would be lovely, and subscribe. So let's get into the topic. Now, when you're a royal, there are different ways you can fortify yourself for security, and will have to at times, especially if your life is obviously always being threatened. A lot of these YouTubers, they have small experiences with this. Not to say they're not relevant, but just on a smaller level, like it might be a person that is threatening them, not an entire country or, some kind of secret service that's trying to come after you as a group. That's the kind of thing and level I've been having to deal with. And you'll find all of that within film production sets. So, the strategy that Harry's been having to take is with Meghan, to make that leap and turn themselves, hopefully, as they want, into a celebrity. And this they want to fortify with traditional security. People, bodyguards, guns, IPP status, armored vehicles, a processional to an event, all of this. That's his strategy. Now, in Machiavelli, the prince, one may fortify themselves better, especially in time of threat of war and your country being taken over, is to remove yourself and to make yourself into a hidden monarch. You can do this in different territories, and it would appear that my familial relations were able to do this. Harry's not a monarch, he's not able to take a territory, but mine was able to. But then there's a drawback of that. You're hidden, you're anonymous. I, out of the entire family, wanted to go into mass media and into the public eye. But the moment that scrutiny is going to come on me, people are going to quickly start to realize many of the things that have been going on around me and my background. And there are questions, and it was going to be a massive situation. So it was a man who posed as Dodi Fayed on Dodi Fayed's behalf. He came to me. I think my father may have asked him to do this because they were interacting, it would appear. We'll get into this another time. You know his name because he's the man who was said to be in a relationship and had a said accident with Lady Diana at the Alma Bridge or Tunnel a few years after I knew him. He tried to fortify me by offering me a condo he had bought to live in for free, and I said no, because I was not aware of my familial background quite yet at that time. And my father, it would appear, asked him to fortify me within film or find the way that this could even at all be possible. I was so certain this was my route in life, and it's probably a real nightmare for him, because I had taken theater for 5 years at that point at one of the most prestigious theater schools in Canada, really worked at it. You know, I was extraordinarily invested in these pursuits. And I had just gotten into one of the hardest, if not it was the most expensive university course in Canada. And it had a worse acceptance rate than medical school for studying film production for my BAA. And they hardly ever took women into this course at that point. And they tried to get rid of more than half of the first year students within the first year. So I was really pushing hard to move into mass media. My father was, you know, what am I going to do here? So Dodie was trying to make sense of, I think, the way that I could fit into this. Now, it was, if you know, there are two different routes you can take. You could be a celebrity, or you could, you know, take more of the behind the camera route. And Dodie kind of, it appears, tested me out to see if I could put up with a lot of the monstrosities that would come my way, a la Weinstein. And the answer was no. No, I wouldn't have any patience for that. And it actually came to a head later on between me and people of that type of person. And we'll get into why that tradition may have ever started in the first place in another video, but I don't accept it. So there's the other route that's behind the camera, and that's hard work, working your way up. And I think the reasoning as well was, when you work on a crew, the studio's security is your security. And Dodie took this insight about who I was and brought it to very established producers. One of them was George Lucas, to tell him about me. And so as I would be on different sets and the like, really high up individuals seemed to know who I was, and nobody on the crew had any clue at all. And so I always had very unique, very loving, sometimes very hard experiences on these sets, as it appeared they were trying to prepare me or have me understand something that I had to know, or the way to present oneself, or what to expect when you're in the public eye, because I couldn't just make a leap, as you know, most celebrities, into that. I had a huge familial background. There would be many questions about my life experiences that would naturally follow. I'm sure you people will have for me the more you hear me talk. And the way to deal with that situation and make sure that you're being genuine and truthful, and to keep me completely, you know, in every way. I would say I'm almost the most monk-like person you will ever meet. No drinking, no drugs, no, you know, any sexual relations. And if you want to have a clean living in any way dealing with Los Angeles studios, you're going to be on a film crew, because that's all there is. You have no life outside of film sets. You really, truly don't. And so this was my security. Millions of dollars they always had into studio security. All these celebrities, their security is my security. But all the time. They would have to pay for their own when they're not on set. I wouldn't, because I'm always on set. Always. And so that's the situation it appeared he had set up for me prior to his said accident. And that's the other way you can go about it, but that is very hard work. You know, what he did was, he had this man posing for him on his behalf as Dodie. And this is documented. This is, I'll get into another time. You have not ever heard this story, but this was all revealed to the public just, I think, a month prior to his said relationship with Diana. Yes, just 1 month before his said relationship, there were 2 Dodies in the world. And you would think that that would be profoundly relevant to an inquest, but it wasn't. even ever talked of. And a lot of the information you have nowadays isn't even at all accurate to what it was back then. It's quite telling, and we'll get into this another time. So what he did is he had another man named Hody, who was a director, and now don't trouble Hody at all, because I don't think he actually knew anything. Dodie was just trying to have me see that you build around yourself a body of individuals you work through. This was a new concept to me. It's not just your staff or anything. These are people who, for your namesake or the like, you kind of build them up around you and make use of them like chess pieces almost. So Hody had me apprentice with him in film production on a set that was had very Star Wars themes within it. Got to work directly with Billy D. Williams. It was a real pleasure. But being a director's apprentice didn't exist and still doesn't, because it goes against union rules in a lot of ways. So this was an exceptional what this man was doing. And so they placed me on the set as Marilyn Monroe, essentially, except in the background. So the only time, Cody was saying, the only time you'll be on camera is if you're in the background. And otherwise, you're a director's apprentice, assistant director, working your way up as a director until you have that expertise, which I'm well beyond now, to be able to take on projects yourself. And deal with mass media, not little independent stuff, mass media. This is the route you're taking. It's the route of, it's absolute purity, actually. It's very grueling work, but at the same time, it keeps you really straight. And so that's my security. When I would go to set, every entryway is guarded by production. My food is provided for solely by production. My transportation drivers are all production. So all of the money that all of these studios go into fortifying their productions and, celebrities were all around me every day that I was alive for well over a decade. And that's millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars in my budget that I didn't have to pay. And I'm getting paid to be there on top of this and learning. And that's the hard thing, is that, making that leap, when you have, in Machiavelli, the Prince, as said, where you're making the leap from a situation that's volatile and like a world war or something to this effect, a monarch is faced with the situation where they can place themselves within a hidden exile, or a hidden exile, essentially, make themselves a hidden monarch. And you can even separate a territory, and that's what it appears they did with my family. Harry couldn't do that because he's not a monarch. He can only separate himself and try to become a celebrity. So I'm coming from the point of view of going within that security that was built for me, that my father was aware of, and making the leap into the public eye. It's not easy. And so then, the very first day, or within the first few days, I was on these film sets in Vancouver, where these knowing above-the-line producers and the like were going to try to help out. Stan Lee was the first person who arrived. He had his cameo the day I was there, and they had placed beside me this security guard, and we would talk at length. I don't know if he knew my personal investigation I was doing into Dodie and Diana, but it was one of the last things we talked about. I said to him, oh, how did you get into film security? And he said, well, I was a former Interpol officer, and I was a personal bodyguard of Lady Diana. And I said, And I said, oh, I had apprenticed with Dodie Fayed in film production. And he said, huh? And so essentially I said, I don't want to get into it here on the film set, but I'd love to have your information so we can connect again later. And so, and then I did connect with him later on, and it was not a good situation. Something had attacked him. I had messaged him and said I was ready to meet and talk, and he wrote back that he was so sorry he couldn't get back to me right away. There was something, he said, it's not food poisoning, it's something else, but I cannot stop throwing up. I'm so sorry. I don't know what's wrong with me. And so I just pulled back from him because I was genuinely worried about him and thinking, well, is this connection between us causing this? Because it both started at the same time. And I think it was at that point that the studios took it very seriously, that there's something not quite right here. And I had been on a different production after that, and it was the L Word. And I hadn't seen any of it. And it was all closed sets, as you can imagine, all the time. I myself, I'm a heterosexual, but I've always been a part of this community, backing it completely, and the love within. And it was a real pleasure working on this production set, but they started getting sick. Some of the actors, some of the crew, some of the producers, and they were throwing up. And nobody could figure what was causing it, because some of them, they're going, well, one of the crew members who got sick when he was there, I said, well, what happened? Where did you eat? And he said, I actually ate at McDonald's. So I don't know how, I was, like, because other people were getting sick, I wasn't eating off of caterers. So what caused it? They didn't know. So the producers start to ask me to bring their food to them, because I'm the only person they trusted in this situation. And then it all just went away. I don't know what that was. But when you know more of my background, you know, poisoned apples and all is a theme I've had to deal with a ton in my existence. And being on film sets, it just got worse. So the security level on these productions just became bigger. And the more people got to, like, it would just progress from one to the next, you know, and different experiences I was starting to be given so that I could get up and out of this situation. And, but yeah, later on, after working with Tim Burton on the set of Big Eyes, I was poisoned. And if I had to describe it, it was precisely what that former Interpol officer had described himself going through. It was not food poisoning. I was poisoned. I was throwing up constantly. And for an entire week, I did not keep anything in, not even water. And this is not the flu. This was poison. And I'll get into that another time because it was quite relevant to that moment where I think the studios were feeling it's time to tell her her background so she can make this leap. And I think there were struggles going on behind the scenes about where I was from, people who were, you know, possibly family or you know, security of where I was originally from, giving them a hard time with that. And them saying, no, this has to end. This isn't right. And there's something really not right going on here. You can't have this person constantly run into problems like this in life and not be aware of why she's facing all of these dangers, why she's always, you know, having to not progress ahead when she's a genius, brilliant, talented, and yet still being sat on. Obviously, there's something not proper here. So, my love to all of them for breaking these barriers and walls, not unloving walls, the other side of it that's not proper and keeping me from progressing. And so there's that element of security. Now, other royals in Los Angeles, one of them to mention, Johnny Depp. He claims to be a descendant of King Edward III, I think it is. So I don't know what that makes him to Elizabeth. My father was Elizabeth's first cousin. He was something like 20th or 40th or something like this cousin, but it is what it is. When you become a celebrity, what gravitates to you in a large part is based on your own background and what you bring to it in a unique way. And so there's a very large if with him. This is part of his background. You take it to heart and you start to delve into it. And I'm sure he's read all kinds of books on it. And he identifies with this. You'll see Edward is a name, Edward Scissorhands, Ed Woods. This is something he's been into for a long time, that he has tried to see himself as and cast himself as and allow it into his life. And his work and my work interact and have interacted in film. Well, it's been since I was a teenager, so decades of my life. And we'll get into that a bit more in the next video. But what he does is when he wants to go out in public, John will put on a costume sometimes, like actual prosthetic costume. And he's been known to dress up as an old weathered rocker. So you might see some guy, and he loves to play with that. His teeth got kicked out when he was young. He can actually remove his front teeth. He can look a real mess if he wants. And so you may even be talking to him and have no idea that that's him. And he's been playing with it more and more. You can see him playing with people not being able to really know who he is. And so that's Johnny Depp. I've seen Tom Cruise do this in front of my face. When I first met him, he disguised himself with prosthetics. And we were in a group of people. I'll get into it another time. But they had no idea, or they were playing at not knowing. But to me, it was obvious. Tom with his wild eyes. You just can't hide this. I went straight up to him. And I'm looking, because when you work in film, I've worked with prosthetics so many times, but when I'm really close with the actors and they're an alien or something, you can see. But him, that work was really good. I don't know. It was very high-end, what he was paying for. He must have had a ton of fun doing it. And he could go like that through anywhere. There are times you see it and you're going, even when it's on screen, you're going, yeah, but how does not anybody notice that that's a prosthetic, But he really pulled it off well. So, that's another way you can do this, is a disguise. But you are aware of who you are. So there's a hidden exile, or making yourself a hidden monarch. That's one way. But then part of the security is to hide the secret of that from your own familial surroundings even. Or traditional security. Or to hide yourself within, disguise in anonymity, but your background and who you are. That's the other end of the spectrum. And part of what I say in relation to, this former Interpol officer who was Diana's security guard is that when I worked all these years, I met so many people on these sets. They're not what you expect. These aren't just people who took a security guard course. You meet all kinds of people, and many that don't tell you who they are, within this environment that are of all kinds of agencies and different backgrounds, FBI, CIA, different countries. And they all come together, within this world of mass media because it's so influential worldwide. You could start wars, you could cease wars with the right movie. It is powerful media. You get all sorts in these places and really neat people you meet. And I'm one of them, where you don't expect that some person on a crew is going to be this or that or have this background, and yet here you are. And so I just wanted to share this with you, get a better sense of myself, maybe a bit of John Depp. Sorry. It's a long story. And Harry, in the different ways that we have to deal with it. Have a lovely day.